multiple choice questions. We all are educators here, so we have some basic idea about the item writing. Item writing is writing the question papers. So as we know in our learning and teaching profession, we have the question paper that we are going to form. Before each PE exam, we are going to form a question paper. Before the half yearly exam as well as the final exam, we are going to form the question paper. So we have some basic idea about the formation of the question paper, whether it is subjective type question paper or objective type question paper. So today in this session, basically we are going to discuss about how to frame the multiple choice questions. So this presentation, we are going to see how to create effective multiple choice questions. This presentation will also provide item writing guidelines as well as best practices to prevent students from just guessing the correct answers. Now today's session is divided into two parts. In the first part, we will see the different terms associated with item writing. Then we will see the different rules about how to construct effective multiple choice questions. Now let us see some terms related with the item writing. The first term is item. So item is nothing but it is a test question that is designed to assess the knowledge, skills or abilities of a person or any student. Now next part in this term is stain. The main part of the question is known as the stain. Then we have the stimulus. The part of the item that presents or exhibits information might be a reading passage, image or audio. It is known as essay. Then we have the options. Generally we are giving 4 options in multiple choice questions. So these 4 options are basically A, B, C, D are the options. And out of these 4 options we are giving one correct option, that is known as the key. And rest of the 3 incorrect options are known as distractor. I will give you one example so that you can know about the items, stain, options, key and distractor. For example, which law states that every object in this universe attract each other? So this part is forming the question, so this is known as stain. Now we are forming the options. 4 options I am giving: law of inertia, universal law of gravitation, law of action and reaction, or law of heavy. So these 4 options I am giving, and out of these 4 options, one will be the correct answer, that is known as key. So universal law of gravitation is the correct answer, so that is the key. And rest of the 3 options that I have given, they are known as distractor. Now next is the item types. So there are 2 major item types categories. The first is selected response, in which we need to select the response. For example, multiple choice questions, they are in the category of selected response. Then we have multiple response, more than one answer, and drag and drop or matching type questions. There are 2 columns in the matching type. One is the question part, another is the answer part. One part is matched with the second part. So these are in the category of selected response. Then we have constructed response. In constructed response, we need to construct the answer. Like subjective type questions, where students need to construct the answer, that is in the category of constructed response. For example, essay type, when we are taking the essay to write, that is in the category of constructed response. Then we have short answers or fill in the blanks. So short answer or fill in the blanks is in the category of constructed response. Then we have the performance test. Now what is performance test? Can anybody answer? What is the performance test? We have some basic idea of this.
Any of the question that is based on what we have understood, something like that.
Now where students need to perform, that is known as performance test. I will give you one example. Like in higher secondary section, we have physics practical exam, or chemistry practical, bio practical, or physical education practical. In such type of practicals, the students need to perform. For example, in physical education, when there is physical test, like in the form of long jump, high jump, okay, students need to perform. So that is known as performance test, and this performance test comes in the category of constructed response. So what are the 2 types of items? There are 2 types. One is selected response, another is your constructed response. In selected response, a student just need to select the options and in constructed response, a student needs to construct the answer. Now, what is the objective of item development? What is the idea that comes to your mind when we are talking about the item development? Because when we are teaching to the students, when we are discussing any topic, or when we are explaining any principle, at the end we must know how much a student has understood about that principle or that concept. For that, we need to develop the items. So the main objective of item development is to build the exams that are high quality, legally defensible, and produce reliable and valid scores. Now next, create items that directly assess the knowledge and skills in the questions and minimize distractions and undue influence. So the main objective of item development is to assess the progress of any student. Okay. And when we are making the item, basically we are building the exam for the students or the learners. Now how to write the items? Now there are some guidelines for constructing the items. The first is determine the topic for the item. So at a time, first we need to determine which topic we are going to target. Okay, suppose let us choose any topic. Suppose any poetry section is there, and we need to target that poetry section only. Suppose we are targeting certain principle, or suppose we are targeting only the definitions or the terms. Then first we need to determine the topic for each item. Second is establish the scenario. Now establish the scenario means which type of questions we want to frame. Whether it is subjective type, if you want to frame the subjective type, what will be the type of that subjective question. Next is if you want to construct the objective questions, what will be the type, whether it is matching type or multiple choice questions or multiple response questions. So next is to establish the scenario. Next is determine all the necessary information regarding that topic, everything. Since our discussion is limited to multiple choice questions, so when we are forming or constructing the multiple choice questions, we must gather all the information related to that topic. That is the question, that is known as stem, option, key, everything we need to gather the information. Next, reduce, eliminate unnecessary information. Okay, when we are giving unnecessary information, that will create a doubt in the students or learner. And next is think of the steps. You think all of the steps that you have formed, write the item, write down the question, answer it yourself as a student. So whenever we are forming the question, make sure that you are not making the question by being as a teacher. Okay, whenever we are forming the question, you always think of the student. Now how to write the items that I have already explained in the previous topic. Identify a relevant situation or a piece of necessary knowledge that you would like to evaluate. Consult your blueprint. Now again one more point is coming. You can see here, consult your blueprint. So what is the blueprint? Anyone? What is the blueprint? Because all we are knowing about the framing of the question paper, whether it is subjective or objective. Can anyone give me the example of blueprint?
So weightage of each chapter.
Okay, so I will give you a simple example, very simple example. Suppose we are forming a question of 25 marks for PE. Okay, what we do first? First we decide how many sections we are getting, like section A, section B, section C, section D. So section wise we are dividing. For example, in section A we are getting the multiple choice questions or very short questions. In section B we are getting short answers. Then section C, long answers. Like this we are framing, number one. Number two, suppose section A consists of 5 objective questions. How many questions will be of that lower level of difficulty? How many questions? That also we need to consider. Like in CBSE exam class 10th and 12th we have seen, there is a certain section. If 55 objective questions are there, not all 55 questions are in the same section. There are section wise questions. If the question pattern is same, why they are not getting the same questions in a single section? Because in different sections they are putting different kind of objective questions, difficulty level also they are putting different. So that is the blueprint. So blueprint is nothing, that is the whole that performer of that question paper. Now when we are writing the items, we always take the help of the books, reference books or the sources that is available, and determine how to structure the item, because we are forming the multiple choice questions. So first we will form the main part, that is stem part, then we will form the correct answer and distractors. So there is certain rules of writing the correct option also, there is certain rules to write the distractors also. We cannot simply put the distractor or the correct answer. We will see later on in this presentation. Now what is item writing? Item, just we have seen, item is nothing but it is a test question, and item writing is nothing but it is a process of developing or constructing the test questions. So there is a simple difference between item and item writing. Now the key is to, when we are writing the item, the key is to remember the end goal. What is the end goal that you want to achieve when you are doing the item writing? That is a specific test item that we are creating should focus on a piece of knowledge. Whenever we are writing any question, suppose we are writing a single question, that single question must be a specific, very, very specific, and it must be focused on a certain knowledge or certain concept. So test item, when we are developing the test item, it is a continuous process of formulating, reviewing, editing and perfecting test items and questions. And since assessment is a very, very important part of teaching and learning process, so if we will do the item writing very efficiently and effectively, it will add in accomplishing key curricular goals. Now, what are the guidelines of item writing? So some of the guidelines are given here. Define clearly what you want to measure. Number 2, to do this, we need to use as a theory, as a guide to make item as specific as possible. Generate an item pool. Okay, we need to, suppose we need to form 20 questions only for any particular test. So when we are forming 20 questions, or when we need to give 20 questions only, we need to create a pool of questions, at least 50 questions. Then we need to select 20 questions out of 50 questions. And when we are forming the test item, remember that we are not using too lengthy options or too lengthy questions. That will be confusing to the students. Now coming to the multiple choice questions, how to develop the multiple choice questions. So till now we have seen what is item, what are the item types, what is item writing, certain guidelines to the item writing. Now we will see how to develop the multiple choice questions. So these are the 5 steps of developing the multiple choice questions. The first step is focus on one concept per item. At a time, just focus on one concept. Number 2, choose a level of cognition, which level you want to frame. Next is avoid common errors like punctuation error, grammatical errors. Construct the correct answer. How to construct the correct answer we will see later on. And next is the examine response using psychometric data. So these are the 5 main important steps of constructing multiple choice questions. Now uses of multiple choice questions. What are the uses? So using multiple choice questions, we can test the knowledge of terms, whether the students are knowing the terms related to certain topic or facts or not. Number 2, the knowledge of specific facts, like for example, whether the student is knowing in the geometry or not, that triangle has 3 sides or quadrilateral has 4 sides. Knowledge of principles, certain principle related to certain theory, knowledge of methods and procedures. Now, specifications for strong multiple choice questions or items. So, what are the specifications for strong multiple choice questions? Now, I will explain what is the meaning of the term specification by giving one example. For example, when we buy any electronic gadget from the market, for example, a mobile phone, there are certain specifications specified there. For example, what is the RAM, what is the battery backup, or what is the processor. So everything is specified on that. And based upon these specifications, we just measure the quality of that mobile phone. Or for example, when we buy any, even suppose a bulb when we buy from the market, certain specifications are given there. Like what is the power of that bulb, what is the voltage at which it is operating. So there are certain specifications which determines whether we are able to construct strong multiple choice questions or not. So these are the specifications. First is the difficulty level of the item. Okay, so whenever, just I told you, whenever we are developing the multiple choice questions, always remember we cannot give too much, we cannot give very difficult questions to the students. Okay, as a student, first we need to think, then we need to frame the questions. Then the target audience, we need to see the target audience, which group of students or learners we are going to target. Next is the free from biasing. The question paper or the multiple choice questions that we are framing, it must be free from any type of biasing, all type of biasing basically. That is reason, religion, commercial related support, gender. It should not target any particular gender and it is giving favor to a particular gender. Example I will give you in this year in CBSE exam, one question was asked in sociology. That you are aware of that. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Then CBSE released a press that a strong action will be taken against that teacher who has framed that question because that question was biased. So can anyone tell me what was the question, sir? This year, the question was asked.
It was related to Gujarat riot.
Yeah. So the question was asked related to Gujarat riots, in which it was asked which party was involved here. So it cannot be political, it cannot be gender bias or any reason specific. Next, reference supported. When we are developing any question, some reference we need to take. We cannot simply put the question by ourselves. Then relevance. The test item must be relevant and clarity. It must be very much clear. There must be no any grammatical or punctuation error. Now this we have already seen what is the STEM options. So STEM disposes the question options which provide answer choices. The correct answer is called the key, while the three incorrect choices are called as distractors. Now let us see the example and you can identify which is the STEM and what are the options, which is the key and which are the distractors here. So this is one question. I have given 5 options here. Who was president of the US during World War First World War? So this is known as STEM. This part is the STEM because it is posing the question here. And A, B, C, D, E. These are the options. So the first option is Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson, Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge. So the correct answer is Woodrow Wilson. That is your correct answer. So that is known as key. And rest A, B, D, and E. They are the incorrect options. So they are known as distractors. And this whole complete question is basically known as item. Now let us see one more example of objective type. We have one. This question is correct, absolutely correct. There is no any problem with the question. But this is not the correct way of formulating the objective or multiple choice question. Just see this question. Can anybody read this question? Anyone? Read this question quickly. Yeah.
Which of the following is true? A. The Society for the Abolition of Slave Trade was founded in Britain by Granville Sharp and Thomas Clarkson. B. The Society for Abolition of Slave Trade was founded in Britain by William Cowper and Alexander Falcon Brace. C. The Society for the Abolition of Slave Trade was founded in Britain by John.
Okay. So can anyone identify what is the problem? Question is absolutely correct. 4 options are not given. I can only 3 options.
It is mix up of subjective and objective.
Huh?
In the place
Any
of
idea?
same sentence is repeated again and again.
Okay. So see the correct way of formulating the same question. And you just see the difference. What is the difference? Yeah. The STEM part is less. The main question part is less. So the rule number 1, always remember the most part of the question must come in the STEM. Now let's say generally we see such type of questions. This is also very correct question. There is no problem with the question. Was the first American state to abolish slavery? What is the problem with this question? Yeah.
Question what is missing, so like who was
Okay, so basically we are giving the fill in the blanks. Basically we are giving the fill in the blanks that is not required in the multiple choice question. So always avoid. Sometimes we are giving the fill in the blanks and options we are giving. It must be a specific. The same question can be framed like this, you see. Question form. Which was the first American state to abolish slavery? Better use of negative phrasing. We are using the term not in the question. So instead of not, we can use the better use of negative phrasing here. This is one example you can see here. A water-tight extinguisher is suitable for putting out fire caused by burning all of the following except alcohol, cotton, paper. The same question can be framed using that negative, using not. How we can frame? That is not appropriate. So basically, the main idea of framing. Okay. So the main idea of framing the multiple choice question, you keep in mind that we are not using the negative sense. Okay, it must be used in a positive way. Stem is not meaningful. I already explained the most part of the question must come into the stem. Here you can see stem is less, but the answer, the options are plenty. Better stem. The same question is represented. Better stem. Now some of the rules now we will see of writing multiple choice questions. These are very, very important rules. We will just see. Rule number 1. Use plausible distractor. Distractor I have explained. The incorrect options in multiple choice questions are known as distractors. So what is the ideal way of putting the distractor in multiple choice questions? So when we are creating the distractor for multiple choice question, always remember that they are not too away from each other. They must be very, very close to each other. Very, very close to each other. Otherwise what will happen? The students will easily locate the correct answer. If the options that we are giving, they are not very close to each other, the students will easily locate the correct answer. Let us see this example. Example of rule number 1. Which of the following artist is known as for painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel? What is the problem with this question? This question is again correct question, but there is a problem with this question. Even you don't know, you can easily locate the answer. Okay, you can see here Napoleon was a ruler, Michael Jackson was a dancer, Michelangelo, Santa Claus, we know. So only one option is there. Yeah. The same question can be framed. Now look here, the 4 options that we have given here, all are very close to each other. Okay. Now Botticelli, Da Vinci, Michelangelo and Raphael, all were artists. Next question, rule number 2, use question format that we have already seen. Dash played the lead role in the movie Bandit Queen. Okay. Seema Biswas, Manoj Vajpayee, K.K. Menon or Richa Chadha. The same question can be formed using this. Who played the lead role in the movie Bandit Queen? Okay, question format we need to use. Manoj Vajpayee, Seema Biswas, K.K. Menon, Richa Chadha. You can answer also. B. Yeah, correct answer B. Rule, keep options length similar. Okay, so when we are creating the multiple choice questions, the length of each options must be similar. Okay. Now what will happen if the lengths are not similar? We will see. This is the question. Can anyone read this question? Bangalore is known as the Silicon Valley of India due to A. Coffee beans production, B. Kannada film industry, C. linen garments industry, D. IT and software industry since digital computers are made from silicon chips.
IT.
Yeah, so you can see here the options lengths are not similar, so there will be guessing. Generally what happens most of the times when the options lengths are not similar, one is longer, that will be the correct option. Most of the times. The same question can be framed like this. Bangalore is known as the Silicon Valley of India due to coffee beans production, B. Kannada film industry, C. linen garment industry, and D. IT and software industry. So this is the better way to frame the multiple choice question. Next rule, balance the placement of the correct option. Now when we are giving the correct options, what happens? Suppose we are framing 50 questions, and when you will see the answer, you will find out that any one of the options, some have the inclination towards a particular option, like A, B, C, and D. So when you will just check the answer, you will find out that at least out of 50 questions, 20 questions have or 15 questions have same option, like option C. Now what will happen? If the student is giving the exam and he is solving the easy question first, and he is finding that all the options are coming C, he will start taking the option C. So we will not able to basically assess the correct knowledge of the student. So what is the ideal way of putting the options, correct options there? So it is written there. Generally the correct options we are placing at the center and must be exchanged with the extreme ends. Center means 4 options we are giving: option A, option B, option C, and option D. So the correct answer must be placed either at B or at C. And on a periodic basis we need to interchange also with extreme ends. That is with option A and option D. Next rule, avoid clues to the correct answer. Sometimes what happens, we give clue in the question itself and we are asking the question. Okay. So do you know about Sachin Tendulkar? Do you know? Yes. Nobody is saying. Yes. Do you know about Sachin Tendulkar? Yes. Loudly. Yes.
No, also don't.
This side. This side. So if I will ask in which year Sachin was born, please tell me the answer.
1900 something.
Huh?
1900 something.
Okay. So just see the question and you will find out the clue is already given. Now you can easily find out the answer. You don't know what is the year of birth of Sachin, but even then also you can answer this question. See this question. Sachin Tendulkar, known as God of Cricket, made his debut in year 1989 at the age of 16, facing piercing pace bowlers Akram and Bakar. In which year Sachin was born? Yeah. So you can see here the key or clue is already given in the question. If you delete this part, you see either we are deleting 1989 or at the age of 16. Okay. Then basically we are not giving any clue. So the same question can be framed like this. I have not given here, but you know. So the age, that year is given 1989 and the age also is given. If one is deleted, automatically it will become a valid question. There will be no any clue. Use only correct option whenever we are framing the multiple choice question. You always remember we need to frame the correct answer. Sometimes what happens, most of the options are very close to each other also. Means they are very close to answer. They must be mutually exclusive, but they are very close also sometimes. The next question you can see here. Can anybody read this question? Answer.
The Booker Prize winner novel, The White Tiger, which portrays the story originating from coal mine area of Dhanbad, is written by A. Anurag Kashyap, B. Chetan Bhagat, C. Zishan Kadri, D. Arvind Andika.
Okay. So can anyone identify what is the problem with this question?
First 3 are actors. Related to film.
Yeah. Okay.
Please see D is political artist, writer, and D is director.
Yeah. So they are not mutually exclusive. Some of the options are very, related to each other. Like
Chetan Bhagat and Arvind Andika.
yeah. So Anurag Kashyap is a film director and writer. Chetan Bhagat is a novel, but he has got on that novel Booker Prize. Zishan Kadri is also a writer and director and actor. Arvind Andika is a writer. Now the same question can be framed. There will be no any missing. Now you see all the options are very close to each other. Even they are mutually exclusive, but they are very, very close to each other. The Booker Prize winner novel The White Tiger, which portrays the story originating from coal mining area of Dhanbad, is written by Kiran Desai. She is also a writer. Arundhati Roy, she is also a writer. Arvind Adiga is also a writer. Salman Rushdie is also a writer. And all are the Booker Prize winner. Are you getting? Yes. All are the Booker Prize winner. So it will really test the knowledge of the student. What is the correct answer? Okay. Now, when we are writing the multiple choice questions, clear instructions must be given. Okay, section wise, like section A consists of 20 questions. Out of 20 questions, you need to answer only 16. That is given in the CBSE. Section B consists of these many questions. At the same time, you need to clearly mention which type of difficulty level is there when we are forming the question in the school also, in a school itself. In other exams, that is not specified, but the clear instructions must be given when we are framing the multiple choice questions or when we are generating pool of multiple choice questions. Rule number 8, use only a single clearly defined problem and include the main idea in the question itself. That we have already seen in one of the example. Avoid all of the above options. Generally what we do, 3 options we are giving and we are not getting the option, now we are giving all of the above options. Now what will happen? If we are giving all of the above answer and if the student is knowing or student is able to identify 2 correct options, then he will be able to answer the question. What is the problem with this all of the above option? So this is the problem. If the student is knowing the 2 correct answer, he will easily go for the all of the above answer. And most of the cases, same thing is there. If we are putting all of the above option in the question, generally it is most of the times generally it is a correct option. So we seem to avoid this question. Now you can see one example. Which of the following are measures of central tendency? All of them. Are you getting? Even the student is not knowing the answer, we will go for all of them. Next is, which of the following are, same question is written like this, which of the following are measures of central tendency? Yeah, mean, median and mode. Next, avoid the none of the above option, all of the above also, none of the above also. So avoid such type of option in multiple choice question, because we don't know, we will not able to know whether the student is doing the correct answer or not. Let us see the example. Which of the following is an example of game theory strategy? You will scratch my back and I will scratch yours. If the shoe fits, wear it. Monkey see, monkey do. None of the above. None of the above. Because student is not knowing the answer also, you will get the correct answer just by clicking none of the above. Now rule number 11, don't use multiple choice questions when other item types are more appropriate. So multiple choice questions are only on certain topics or certain application part of the theoretical portion of the syllabus. We cannot forcefully impose the multiple choice questions in our assessment. So if it is not appropriate for a certain group of topics or theory part, we should not force that multiple choice question in that. Next is emphasize higher level thinking. Whenever we are getting the question, we should always emphasize whether the questions are of higher level thinking or not. We cannot simply give the easy questions to the students. Then we are not able to judge whether the students are able to think or not. Their thinking ability is improving or not. See the example. This is one example that is based upon the memory only. Which description best characterizes whole foods? A. Orange juice. B. Toast. C. Trans cereal. And D. Grapefruit. Okay, the same question can be formed like this: memory plus application example. So Sally's breakfast this morning included 1 glass of orange juice, 1 slice of toast, a small bowl of prawn cereal, and a grapefruit. What whole food did Sally eat for breakfast? So this is more appropriate that it is testing the application level of the student. Now, what are the advantages of multiple choice questions? So rules we have seen, many rules we have seen. Now we will see what are the advantages of multiple choice questions. So these are the advantages of multiple choice questions. Number one, more questions we can include. Like you can see, CBSE is just giving 1.5 hour or 1 hour for 55 or 50 questions. But if the same 55 questions will be formed of friendly subjective question, is it possible? No. So more of the questions we can give in multiple choice questions. Less time will take. There is no room of subjectivity. You can ask more questions as it takes less time to complete a multiple choice questions compared to an open question that is subjective type. And the learners will only focus on the content only. Now, what are the disadvantages of multiple choice questions? So the first is since multiple choice questions can be fast processed, they are time consuming to create. It is very difficult to create multiple choice questions if you will consider all the rules that we have discussed. They require time to draw up effective STEM questions and corresponding choices. It is time consuming. They don't produce any qualitative data, only quantitative data they will produce. Okay, means what is the way of presentation of the student, what is the thinking level of the student, that we cannot just from the multiple choice questions. So they limit the learners in his answers. That's why it is important to provide another option in the textbook. So it is always advised to keep subjective type questions also in place along with the multiple choice questions when we are assessing the progress of any student or learner. Yes. So that is all from the today's session. Thank you. So there is one assessment.